I built a shelf. And mind me, this very first building project of mine is big, and like I said in the previous video, it was challenging. Before this, everything was on the floor and we've been breaking our backs for years to pick stuff up from the ground. So it's time to change that. First, I cleared out the storeroom and painted the 20-year-old walls with Jotun's 2023 Spring Air and Jotun's Rose Coffee for the window frames and grills. My father and I chose these colors to fit the theme in mind, which is earthy and natural colors. You'll see how it all fits together in the end. Also, there's a new wood finish sold here in Malaysia that I recently discovered, and I can't wait to share it with you. My name is Julian, and this is Lignum Neophyte. The species of wood that I use is Shorea macrophylla, also known as Angabang in the Iban language, and it is a light hardwood. And so we ordered 16 2x2s and 2 sheets of 12mm plywood from the nearest wood supplier we have in the vicinity. And because I didn't know where to get S4S wood at the time, I just made do with these rough sawn lumbers. I did not have a jointer or a planer, and neither did the wood supplier. So it took me a whole week to sand through all these 16 pieces from 80 grit to 120 and 180. So I'm not gonna show you the grueling process because it's very boring and dusty. I also tried my very best to sand as even as I can, even though it did not turn out perfect in the end, but it was okay lah. The design of the shelf is from a video I saw on YouTube by Mark Hansen. Although my design is a little bit different, but it's similar. It is a 6 feet high, 2 feet wide, and 8 feet long shelf. A simple yet strong design, and that is why I chose his design over others. You know, since I'm just a lignum neophyte, where I am just dipping my toes, fingers and hair in woodworking. I don't know if this video will show up in your feed, Mark, but nonetheless, I just want to say thank you for the design. I then selected 6 straightest pieces for the columns and set them aside while I used the rest of the 10 to cut out the pieces I needed for the platforms and studs. What I needed for the shelf was 6 columns, 8 side support pieces for the platforms, 20 pieces of braces for the platform's side support pieces, 6 pieces of short support studs for the bottom platform, and finally 18 pieces of longer support studs for the platforms leading up to the 4th at the top. It's not going to be very clear at this point, and I get it if you feel confused right now, but you'll see how it all play out as I cut and assemble them later on. The only thing different from Mark's video is the joinery. I'm using miter joints with dowels instead of just screwing the pieces of the platform butt to butt. I don't know if that's the correct way of saying it, but it didn't work out how I expected it to in the end, but yeah, it is a lesson for me to learn. And I have learned so much in the past few months from YouTube videos, and here's one of it: precision, which I didn't have when using a circular saw while cutting those 45-degree angles, which turned out okay, but for the dowels I had no issue at all because of one thing: a doweling jig. The one I got was a self-centering doweling jig, which costs around Rm80 ringgit on Shopee. It allows me to straighten the drill bit for my 8mm holes for the dowels, and it also centers the position of the holes from the parallel sides. You just have to draw a straight line beforehand, and you can align the jig by checking the lines on the side of the jig with the line you draw. And if you ask me, this is a very good investment because I know I'll be using it a lot in the future for other projects, and it is something I highly recommend to invest in. Now, like I said earlier, these 2x2s are not all the same size because of my lack of power tools. So the measurements on the inside of the supports will not be the same, but what I could control was the width of the entire platform along with the supports, which is 2 feet as mentioned earlier. I just had to cut the correct lengths for the braces for the insides of each of these platforms, even if the side supports are not the same sizes. 2 of the platforms needed some adjustment because the 2x2 was not straight, it was bowed, so like a bow. So here's a tip I learned from Tamar 3x3 Custom. which is putting dowels into the end grains so the screws would bite into the dowels for a stronger hold. And working alone means I had to push the platform against my house column with my feet so that it was sort of clamping the braces while I fastened the screws. See? These are the bottom 6 studs. I decided to cut them to 6 inches so that there's enough space down there when sweeping. You'll understand later. I'm getting there, so be patient. For the first level of studs up to the top level, I cut them to 22 inches because I'm taking into account the 2 inches from the 2x2's side support of the platforms, and that makes the space in between each level roughly 24 inches, which is 2 feet. If you're kind of lost right now, like I said, don't worry because you'll understand once everything is all in place later. I'm almost there. Just wait for it. Now for the finish, I'm using a hard wax oil made in Malaysia. On YouTube, you'll see many people using Rubio or Osmo in Western regions. The reason for that is it's a great finish and it is very forgiving when applying it. The same goes for this Otter Timber hard wax. It costs almost the same as premium polyurethanes at around 50 ringgit per liter, and it offers a protection level on par with those polyurethanes. The main difference with hard wax oils is that you can still feel the natural wood grain as opposed to having a layer of film finish on the top of the wood like usually like how polyurethanes are, which gives it a 3D depth. So in the end, it's all up to personal preference. But you must keep this in mind. Polyurethane takes more time and work to get a good finish, while for hard wax oils, you just apply with a piece of cloth and leave it overnight to dry and cure. The mixture of oils like those tung oil, palm oil, and linseed oil, and etc. will seep into the wood pores while leaving the hard wax on the surface, protecting and waterproofing the surface from moisture. Then you just lightly sand it the next day and apply the second coat to bump up the sheen and protection. And you can do this up to 4 coats, but usually 2 to 3 coats would suffice. And don't forget to wipe the excess with a piece of clean cloth after 5 minutes of every application. Now, just look at how natural that wood is looking. Speaking of precision earlier, I could only do so much with my circular saw, but when it comes to ripping plywood, it is a very satisfying thing to do. Cutting a straight edge even without tracks that you would have for a track saw, it's very easy. Since I have 2 sheets of plywood, I was able to stack one on top of the other and move it 4.5 inches away from where I want to rip it, because 4.5 inches is the exact distance where the saw blade is from the end of the metal plate on my circular saw. And then I just use my body weight to make sure the plywood doesn't move when I'm ripping it in half. For the moment of truth, yes, it is 24 inches wide, and that's my leap of joy, by the way. Now I'm just testing all the plies to fit. And that looks pretty good. Okay, let's secure these to the support to complete the platform. If you made it this far into the video, congratulations, you learned something, and that is all I could ever hope for when people watch my videos. Hopefully it inspires you to build something for yourself at home, especially when you're thinking about woodworking as a hobby or considering into venturing into woodworking as a career. And I know very well that my finesse is not that great yet, and that is exactly my point. We all have to start somewhere, and for me, it is posting my videos out into the world and learn from the world as well, even when I'm making mistakes and learning from them. With that said, I would really appreciate it if you would subscribe to my channel if and only if you really learned something from my videos, because I'm building a woodworking learning community right here on YouTube, slowly but surely. And it also lets me know that I'm providing value to the people who are watching, and especially to those who want to learn about woodworking, or you might be just one of those people who enjoy watching furniture building videos, and that is fine as well. The assembly was probably more challenging than getting the parts of the shelf ready, because I was already having trouble on fixing the first platform, and half an hour later I figured out that I could stack 3 studs on each end of the bottom platform so I could then slide in the columns and secure them while making sure that they are leveled with the water level ruler. After that, I began securing the 22-inch studs to the column while holding it down to the platform. I realized that I should have, when I brought this in, I should have slid it in this area instead of outside here, because the area is too tall and I don't think I'm strong enough to carry it over the top and put it in. So I'll be right back. Now, as I'm assembling this shelf, you'll start to understand as well the importance of these studs. They are not just there for show. They are there to help distribute the weight of the platform or anything that will be kept on the shelf. The screws are just there to hold everything in place with a little bit of strength in the scale of everything, but the studs are doing the actual work, directing the weight from the top level all the way down to the 6-inch studs and into the ground. Everything was going fine with the assembly up until the 3rd level of the shelf, until I ran into some issues at the top. Never do this yourself. I was working alone, so yeah, that is to be expected.
This is my struggling. This is my struggling face. Little bit more.
Yeah. You want to sleep here? Good or not? Okay, from the looks of it, it's quite sturdy, but the whole thing can still shake a little bit. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to drill holes. I'm going to remove these stubs, 6 stubs actually. So this layer, all 3 stubs, this one, that one, the ones below, all 3. So then I'm going to drill a hole, pilot hole first, and then I'm going to mark it with a drill bit. I'll have to move it back out a little bit again so I can drill some holes into the wall. And fortunately for this house, it was built on red bricks. It's a solid piece of brick, and then the whole house is built on solid red brick, so I wouldn't have to worry about empty spaces or like air pockets inside there or what. Another reason why I chose to lock the shelf to the walls is because we live in a very rural area, and you never know when some kind of animal might just come into your house and rummage through everything on the shelf or sleep on it. And there you have it, a shelf, a functional shelf. No more broken bags, and everything is visible when going through the checklist for the groceries. Can you imagine 20 years and now it's all organized and it actually looks like a storeroom? Oh yeah, the paint colors and the window frames blends nicely with the shelf, huh? So what do you think? Was it good, great, okay, could be better, or just terrible? Let me know in the comments. However, I would say that I did okay, especially on my very first building project at this scale. I hope you enjoyed this video and learned something, because as you can see, not everything went smoothly, and I think that makes for a good video for anyone to enjoy, and maybe you won't repeat my mistakes. Anyways, the next project is going to be something probably no one on YouTube has ever done, but who knows, you'll be the judge of that. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.